They say revenge changes nothing, that it only poisons the person who drinks from it. But I've learned that sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. It's about balance. It's about putting weight back on the side of the scale that once crushed you. I didn't want to ruin him. I just wanted him to understand what silence feels like when love dies inside it. Once he left me, it wasn't with drama or closure. There was no storm, no shouting, no final explanation. He just disappeared, slipping out of my life like a thief who didn't want to wake the house he was robbing. For weeks, I stared at the walls waiting for the sound of his key, the vibration of his message, the echo of his voice. It never came. What came instead was quiet, heavy, and sharp. At first, I begged time to heal me. I tried everything the world tells you to do when your heart is broken. Deleting photos, changing routines, pretending I was stronger than I was. But healing doesn't come from erasure. It comes from confrontation. And I wasn't ready to confront how easily he had thrown me away. Months later, when his name appeared on my phone again, I felt my pulse tighten. It was a message that looked harmless. "How have you been?" 3 words, simple enough to almost sound innocent. But I knew what they meant. They meant he was testing the door to see if it was still open. I should have ignored it. I should have remembered how abandonment felt. But love, even when it's over, leaves behind a weakness that curiosity can slip through. I told myself it was closure I wanted, but it wasn't. It was power. We started talking again. At first, small things. Memories, neutral questions, familiar jokes. He wrote the way a man writes when he's fishing for forgiveness, slowly, carefully, like he's trying not to scare it away. I didn't give him anger. I gave him warmth. I knew he expected bitterness, so I offered softness instead. It disarmed him. It's strange how easy it is to play calm when your emotions have already been burned to ashes. The trick isn't to pretend you're okay. It's to act like you never cared enough to be hurt. That's how control begins. When he asked to see me, I said yes. He arrived looking older, but not wiser. His smile was the same one he'd used when lying before, gentle, rehearsed, perfectly human. I studied it the way a scientist studies a toxin, not with fear, but fascination. I let him talk about his new life, his regrets, his mistakes. I nodded in all the right places. I watched his eyes. I saw relief. He thought forgiveness was close. That's when I decided what I'd do. Revenge doesn't always take shape as cruelty. Sometimes it's a mirror. I would let him fall back into the same illusion he'd left me drowning in, the illusion that we still had a chance. But this time, I would be the one holding the door. Over the next weeks, I gave him exactly what he wanted: attention, kindness, hope. I answered messages instantly, laughed at his jokes, remembered details from stories he thought I'd forgotten. I let him believe I was still the woman he left behind, still waiting, still soft, still his. But I wasn't her anymore. I was something colder, sharper, quieter. Every time we met, I noticed how his guard lowered, how easily he began to trust again. I could almost see the satisfaction in his smile, as if winning me back would erase his guilt. But guilt isn't a debt someone else can pay. It's a mirror they eventually have to face alone. He began to talk about second chances, about how maybe we were meant to find our way back. I let him believe it, because sometimes the kindest revenge is letting someone build their own hope before you take it away. The night I ended, it was warm, still, painfully beautiful. The kind of night that feels like a memory while it's still happening. We met at the same restaurant where we'd celebrated our first anniversary. He'd chosen it himself, probably imagining symmetry, rebirth, forgiveness. He wore the same scent as before, and for a fleeting moment, I almost felt the old ache return, the one that made me want to reach across the table and believe in him again. But pain has a memory too. He talked about the future, about trips we never took, about starting fresh, maybe even moving in again. I listened quietly, tracing my finger along the rim of my glass, and realized something strange. I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt pity. He still thought love could be rewritten like a story where the mistakes don't matter. But I'd already read our ending. When the bill came, he reached for it, as if chivalry could erase betrayal. I let him. I stood up, smiled, and told him I'd wait outside. The air was cool when I stepped out. I could see our reflection in the window, two people who once promised forever now standing in the aftermath of it. He joined me moments later, his face soft, open, almost childlike in its hope. I turned to him, looked him in the eye, and said nothing. I didn't need to. He took a step closer, searching for some sign, some word, some forgiveness. Instead, I gave him a kiss, slow, deliberate, final. It wasn't passion, it was punctuation. He smiled faintly, whispering something about how this felt right again. I smiled back. Then I placed the key to his apartment in his hand and walked away. He didn't call out. Not at first. But when he realized I wasn't turning back, he called my name. Once. Twice. His voice broke on the third. I kept walking. Revenge wasn't supposed to feel this quiet. It wasn't triumph. It was release. But behind the release was something else, an ache that didn't dissolve. A part of me still wished he'd understood without being taught. But some people only learn loss through experience. He texted for days afterward. Messages layered in apology and confusion, each one a thread of desperation. I never answered. That silence was the lesson. Weeks passed. The numbness settled into something more complicated, a calm sadness that refused to fade. I saw him once after that, months later, across the street near a cafe. He looked thinner, tired, haunted. For a brief second, our eyes met. He smiled weakly. I didn't. I just looked at him and saw the mirror I'd left him with. Then I turned away. I thought revenge would erase him. Instead, it carved him into me in a different way. Not as love, but as proof. Proof of who I became after him. Proof that I could burn without turning to ash. Sometimes, at night, I replay that final kiss in my mind. Not because I miss him, but because it reminds me of the moment I regained control of my story. There's power in choosing when the chapter ends. There's freedom in being the one who writes the last line. Yet even now, there's a part of me that aches for the simplicity of the girl who once believed love could fix everything. I miss her innocence more than I miss him. She was soft, hopeful, unguarded, but maybe she had to die so I could live. I know people will say revenge doesn't heal. Maybe they're right. But it gave me clarity. It showed me that heartbreak isn't about losing someone. It's about rediscovering the parts of yourself you abandoned for them. When I think of him now, I don't feel rage. I don't even feel sorrow. I feel understanding, not forgiveness, not affection, just the quiet realization that he was the lesson I didn't know I needed. And in that realization, I found peace, the kind that doesn't smile, doesn't celebrate, but simply is. The night I kissed him goodbye, I thought it was the end, but it wasn't. It was the beginning of the woman who walked away and never looked back.